Evening, everyone. This is Professor Hill. It's a short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics, Philosophy 2306, here at St. Philip's College for the Maymester of 2022. Today is Saturday, the 28th of May, 2022, and I have gotten home to San Antonio. I was in Houston for the last couple of days, and but I wanted to make a quick video for you because tomorrow, Sunday, the 29th, is when our next assignment is due at midnight. And it's an essay on the case of the student's cartoon. So I did want to spend a little time talking with you about that and posting this up today. But I know that it's going to be seen and read and thought about through the lens of what happened this week, the horrific events, the school shooting out in Uvalde. Although this case has been in canvas since the beginning of the semester and actually took place years ago. Again, it's a true story, one I was personally involved with. And I can tell you that I got called into it because at the time I was doing judicial affairs, meaning looking at the non-academic side of student behavior and conduct. So there's an academic side, which is handled by the professors and the academic deans. Like if somebody cheats on a test or there's a case of plagiarism, those are kind of academic things in the classroom. Then there's also student conduct outside of the classroom. And again, a lot of that is, drunken stupidity and fights in dorm rooms and, destruction of property, but also serious, very serious things. Assaults, sexual assaults. There's a lot that has to be dealt with in terms of a student code of conduct. Again, a code of ethics. And a judicial system that is an administrative process within the college or university. There's always going to be, especially when you get to serious offenses, parallel, separate legal charges, investigations, charges, trials, the whole regular criminal justice piece. And, sometimes you'll read in the media accounts which are misplaced, and that folks somehow get the impression that a college university will choose to handle it and somehow like take it away from the state and the police and the DAs. And we can't do that. They're separate side by side. Now, if there's a police investigation and the DA decides not to bring charges and drops it, that's completely on the criminal side and separate from investigations and charges and hearings, formal or informal, and judicial handling of cases in a college university. And sometimes they get related and interwoven, but always with the deference to the civil authorities and what they're doing. What you will find, though, in some cases, though, is that the college or university will handle it in an administrative way because they're dealing with the consequences and the effects on the students and the academic community. Whereas, given the seriousness of it, or even despite the seriousness of it, the lack of evidence or other reasons why the prosecutor won't charge somebody, a lot of times the college gets frustrated because there's not criminal charges brought. And so they're left feeling like, well, we can only do what we can do. But it's not like a college or university can, put someone in jail. It doesn't work like that. The most severe thing you can do is kick somebody out of the college. And then short of that, there are going to be other sanctions like probation, or there's going to be, there's kind of a wide variety of sanctions for a wide variety of student judicial behavior. down to, minor things, which have informal hearings and you get a warning and told not to do it again, up to, like I said, sometimes probation, sometimes suspension for a period of time, even years, and then sometimes ultimately expulsion, which is the biggest thing you can do. Anyway, that's the background about a case like this. I was on, when this happened, I was working on the non-academic side, right? The student judicial side. And I got a call from the dean who had got the case from the professor and said, what do you think I should do? In fact, the first question was, is this an academic case or a judicial case? And he was like, it seems like it's academic because it happened in a class. And yet the type of behavior, this threatening behavior, sounds like a judicial thing, not necessarily an academic thing. It's not like plagiarism or cheating on a test. And I said, deferring to the dean, I said, look, we could do it either way. I said, I'm happy to take the case and deal with it. You can keep it and deal with it if you want. And he said, what do you think I should do? I said, well, you got to start with doing an investigation and talk to the student and find out if, what their side of the story is. Charge them, but give them a hearing, give them an opportunity to tell their side of the story. And what happened in this particular case was that the dean did do that. And the student came in and said, look, oh my gosh, where did you get this? I did draw that, but I threw it away. I never meant to threaten anybody. And you know that because, I threw it away. And I'm, embarrassed, but I did do it. I'm happy to cooperate. I'm happy to, defer to y'all whatever you think is right. But I was just doodling in class. I didn't mean anything by it. And would never threaten a professor. In fact, I didn't, which was an interesting point. And so the dean listens to all this and believes the student, which is an important piece. And said, look, I'm going to look into this some more, but I'll call you back. And sure enough, investigated the student. The student had been making great grades, had a clean record, had never been arrested or had any judicial problems or academic problems before. And so the dean went back to the professor and said, hey, look, I looked into this and I know you were upset about it, but there really wasn't a threat here. It was just a student who was scribbling and doodling and threw it away. That's the key piece. So I'm just going to not go any further. Well, the professor just blows up and has a stroke about this and is like, what are you talking about? I have been threatened by a student, and you know how I know this? Because look, it's right here. Here it is in your hand. Look at this. And you're saying you talked to the student and the student admitted that they drew it. Case closed. And the dean's like, yeah, but they were just doodling and then they threw it away. Some other dang student fished it out of the trash and brought it to you. And the professor wasn't having it. It's like, I cannot believe you will not take any action. This is exactly what people talk about when there's some terrible school shooting and people say, oh, we should have acted sooner. And there were all these warning signs that were ignored. That's what you're doing right now. The dean says, all right, look, let me think about it some more. And then the dean calls me back and says all of this to me and says, what do you think I should do? And I said, well, look, here's the thing. It's up to you. If you're handling it, that's fine. But I can tell you what I would do. And in this case, it sounds like you want to somehow punish the student to make a professor happy. That's never a good idea. I said, you should punish students when you find that they are in violation of the code of student conduct. If they have violated the ethics, you investigate and you say, yes, this student is a danger. They are a threat. They threaten this professor, and that's what you're going to punish them for. But you're telling me you don't believe that. The dean's like, I really don't think that this was a threat. I think it was a misunderstanding. I think that the kid, the biggest evidence to me was that the student threw it away. I said, well, then you just need to tell the professor too bad and just, let the student walk. Well, the dean decides that is going to come up with a compromise. And I'll come back to why I think this was problematic. But what happened was it mattered when this was happening. And what I mean by that is it was very close to the end of a semester. It was like in the last week of classes. And so the dean says, okay, look, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call the student back in, say, look, you've been charged. You got a letter. You had a chance to come and tell your side of the story, but I'm going to find you in violation of the code, and I'm going to punish you by suspending you for the rest of the semester. And so does this. And the student's reaction is, oh, okay, whatever you think is best. And then says, so but we're talking about like for the rest of the semester means like 3 or 4 days, right? And the dean's like, well, yes. And then the student says, well, what about my final exam? And the dean says, look, don't go back to class. I'll have somebody else give you your final exam, some proctor or something we'll have. So you'll still be able to take your test and it won't affect your grade in the class. Student says, great. And then says, it says here in the letter that I can, that once I'm suspended for any semester, I have to sit out the next one too. So I also have to be out the next semester. And the dean says, well, yeah, but in this case, it's the spring semester. So that just means the summer and you can come back in the fall. So the student says, okay, just to be clear, I'm suspended for a couple of days. I'm going to go do my summer internship, which I've already got in place and was planning on being gone to do my summer internship. And I was planning on being back in the fall, and that's okay. I can come back. No problem. And dean says, yeah. He says, okay, well, listen. And the student was great about all of this. The student says, well, then I will abide by your sanction, and I appreciate your leniency. And like I said, I never meant any harm, but I will abide by all this. No problem. I won't challenge it or appeal it or anything. Thank you for your help. So out the student goes. And then the dean calls in the professor and says, listen, I took what you said seriously. And I really reconsidered and I have suspended that student. And the professor's like, oh, thank goodness. That's all I wanted to hear. I'm glad that you heard me. I was glad I feel listened to. And the dean's like, well, I want you to know that I told that student to hit the bricks. So he's been suspended. And so the professor's like, thank you so much. That's all I wanted to hear. And then leaves. Well, what did happen was the student was suspended. They took their other exams. They took the one exam with the professor in a separate room by himself, did the whole thing, passed the class, no problems. Went off to do the summer internship, came back in the fall, like nothing had happened, and finished school. And the dean thought that this was all kind of clever because it was a punishment. It was, a guilty finding and a punishment which made the professor happy and feel safe. And yet it was also turned out to be pretty lenient in its impact. But again, the student who had no history of any problems before and didn't have any problems after that, took it in stride and graduated and went on. Now, I think there's a lot of things wrong with this particular story, not least of which is it makes a difference that it's at the end of the semester as opposed to the middle or the beginning. There's something about equal justice in that which strikes me the wrong way. It strikes me that the professor kind of went backwards, started with the punishment, and then went and found guilt or innocence in terms of the sanction or not. Was there a violation or not of the code, was kind of being driven not by the fact finding, not by the interview with the students, not with the investigation, but by the complaints of a professor. That's also not a good idea. And I do think that there were probably other repercussions for the student, because at some point down the road, this is a student who's walking around with a judicial record. You have to answer questions like, were you ever suspended from school? And the answer is going to be, yeah. Why were you suspended from school? For threatening a professor. Well, that sounds bad. And it's kind of hard to explain, well, yeah, but even the dean didn't really think I did it. And that's kind of a tough sell, as opposed to the black and white on the paper. You might not ever get to explain that story. People might just pass you over. So that, I don't think it was as lenient as the dean had thought he had cleverly arranged. I would hate to think that there was big repercussions from that down the road. Now, that was my approach at the end. But like I said, in light of this week, in light of the whole series of school shootings, was there a risk that the student was really threatening and were lying? Maybe, yeah. Do we need to protect our communities? Absolutely. But we need to protect them from threats. So the threshold question in this case study is, was there even a threat? If you say yes, then I can see going that way. And that's the thing. The question about zero tolerance policies is that they take away discretion. They impose themselves upon the professional judgment of administrators who often have years of experience and conduct investigations. They've been trained. But a zero tolerance policy just says, it puts you in a bad position because it's kind of an all or nothing thing. And in this case, the only way would have been to not charge the student at all with any violation, which would have made the professor unhappy. Or if you charge them with any kind of violation of the code, there's a zero tolerance policy, means they're going to get, expelled. So those aren't wise. They kind of had their heyday in the 90s. People thought they were going to be good deterrents. They realized they weren't really great deterrents. They just created headaches and problems for people. So there's not a lot of them around. People don't brag about zero tolerance policies anymore because they realize that sometimes there are gray, complex cases that don't give you good, just outcomes when you apply this brute force of a zero tolerance policy. So that's also a factor. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit more detail about the actual case and what happened and some of the background to it and how it turned out. The student did graduate and went on, and last word I heard, didn't have any problems, but I do worry about that. So write your essays. Always make sure that the first thing you turn in, comment on at least 2. And I did drop one in just to make sure that if you go in now, there'll be 2 for you to comment on as well as your own posting. So get them in by tomorrow night, Sunday night at midnight, the 29th. That's tomorrow. If you got any questions, let me know. Just send me a message via Canvas or reach out to me. On the old cell phone, you guys have got that number. You need to text or call. So if you got questions, let me know. Take care, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye. I'm getting a message here that says, get off the computer. Okay. Take care, y'all.